Roll call.
Councilman Daly?
Here.
Councilman Leonard?
Here.
Mayor for Tempore Duper?
Present.
Mayor Rigsby?
Here.
Councilman Popescu is absent this evening.
Thank you. We'll begin with the invocation and Pledge of Allegiance by Councilman Daly. Please stand.
Please join me in bowing our heads. Father in heaven, we thank you for the many blessings that you provide us. Thank you tonight especially for the privilege of living in this free and wonderful country and in this beautiful city. We ask now that you guide us in our discussions and deliberations and ask that these decisions be the best. We pray these things in your name. Please join me in our country's Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Are there any items to be added, deleted, divided, or multiplied?
No, sir.
Okay. Would the public like to speak on any items not on the agenda? You have 3 minutes, starting now. Okay, time's up. First item, I am conflicted, and I will leave the room and hand the gavel over to Mayor Pro Tempore. Good thing I brought my phone.
Okay, moving on to item number 1, which is our public hearing. This was continued from September 23rd. And Mr. Bolich?
Okay. This is a continuation of the public hearing for the, we're calling PS2, the new parking structure associated with the campus transformation at Loma University Health Systems. So what we're going to look at, and what you asked us to kind of take a closer look at last time, was the overall vicinity and what's going on around that area, kind of an overview of the parking structure, the traffic implications, the impacts and the abilities to have turns in and out of Barton Road, a fairly detailed traffic study, traffic plan, considerations on access, ingress, and egress out of the structure and other related places on Campus Street, pedestrian access, and then we'll take a look at some of the materials and the landscaping. So, we're taking a pretty big step backwards to really give an idea of the context of the university, the medical center, and how that fits in the whole city. Sometimes, we kind of all spend our lives in this little corner, but there's some pretty big impacts. We're looking at the parking structure in this corner, and why that spot versus any other spot, and how that fits in. So in the city's general plan, we've defined multiple special planning areas. 3 of them are specifically university related. Special planning area D, that's out behind the academy, or A, sorry, I'm mind locked into D. Special planning area A is slated and designed in the general plan as kind of a research complex, some classroom, some institutional uses, some residential uses really associated directly with that research campus. And we're talking, as we're talking these, we're talking 10, 15, 20, maybe as much as 50 years into the future of what the shape of our community is going to be like. Special planning area B is what we typically call the farm, and that area behind Poplar Street all the way out to Elmer Dignio Park. Is primarily laid out as a residential area, apartments, fairly dense residence, parks, some commercial, some retail, kind of the place that we also saw some of the, not necessarily dormitory, but student housing associated with the campus. We've had conversations with LUASC about, actually fairly recently, about developing pedestrian access bridges across the tracks that's something that is envisioned as part of this plan. And Special Planning Area C is a horizontal and vertical mixed use, the multi-story, multi-use activity between Barton Road through Prospect and up to Mound Street. So that would be, classrooms, stores, offices, residential units, restaurants, this kind of hub or heart of the campus. And this is already laid out in our general plan as far as what we're looking at into the future. Projects that have been going on are on the drawing board that you're going to see. We'll kind of work around real quick. We just finished the Stewart Street widening. Downtown, we're processing a facelift for all the downtown buildings and kind of bringing that back into what it was and make that look good with plantings. Daniels Hall, the residence halls were put in 5 or 6 years ago. Facelift completing on the Student Center. You will be seeing a realignment of the main entrance, with the main entrance of the campus all the way out to and lining up with the VA. We're completing the pedestrian bridge, linking the new parking structures with the campus street widening that's happened in the last year, and then the alignment of Molnar Way over here. University Church is coming in with a large project to kind of refresh that area, and then Risley Hall is part of the Vision 2020 as far as a outpatient and a health, wellness and awareness center. And then always in the back, we've always had this Evans Street crossing as some way to link the campus heart via vehicle access to this research area on the other side. So we can kind of see how the campus is taking shape and what's going on with peripheral activities, access kind of on the backside, and some real kind of sprucing up and cleaning up and making that more of a campus feel in the center of the school. So what we've ended up doing is really reorienting. Today, you kind of have this north-south running campus that faces east and west. We're in this process with, remember, A and B up here, area C down here, the activity on Mound. You're reorienting the entire campus to kind of an L shape that faces the Mound and really allows there to be a heart and a center to the institution. So it provides this kind of walkable, livable, core that you expect of a college campus, not something with a major thoroughfare going through the middle and a major thoroughfare cutting through the heart of it. So with that, that's how we ended up on that spot. We're looking at a new facility here. It's going to require parking for the existing facility as this lot goes away. So to move this parking activity and this back of house stuff, delivery trucks, parking, ambulance access, we want to take that out of the core of what we're seeing, the core of the campus coming up in the next 20 or 30 years, and put it onto the periphery. So the parking structure, it's 6 floors, all above grade. EIR that you approved was for 7, so it's one floor shorter, 65 feet high, 740 parking spaces. There's 10 electrical vehicle charging places, 1 electrical in the handicapped. All of it is 90-degree parking on mostly flat ramp areas, so there's no spiral, no kind of that where you drive up there's internal ramping happening. And the ramps are along the front on Campus Street. So when we looked at this, especially on the kind of a higher level traffic, and back to what we talked about, this consideration of what's happening in the center is moving some of this traffic with the Prospect and the main entrance realignment to utilize that Stewart Street widening, to utilize this wider campus, and to bring that into a back-of-house type activity. So as we go forward, we'll look at the level of impacts, but that was kind of the concept that the 2 big intersections that are affected is the traffic will really diminish all the way along campus, especially along Prospect, and at least temporarily, and by temporarily, we could be talking 6, 7, 10 years when this section of campus gets widened to match this, there will be some impacts at campus and university until this is signalized and cleaned up. And we have the assurances from LUASC that this intersection will be, will be managed as part of that extension. So those are the two big, traffic kind of changes that are happening in there. We took a look at the level of service, kind of worked our way down Campus Street. As we run down, there's either no change or improvements down the line. Campus University, Campus and Molnar, that's a minor improvement. It's not a full letter grade. Then the parking structure will start out at a level C. That's a new one. Campus and Barton, it's kind of an odd deal. When the traffic study was done, that was before we had finished the widening on the street. So the traffic existed as an F. With the widening in the last few months and with no project, it would actually reduce to an E. And it's kind of the numbers, they just tip a little bit over the letter grade. But with the project and the improvements, it would go back to about the F where it is today. So although it shows as a degradation, it really is putting it back to what it was 6 months ago. And then down Anderson Street, we'll see pretty much similar impacts except improvements around Mound Prospect and a fairly significant improvement at the main entrance. One of the things you asked us to look at was access off of Barton Road into the facility. So we dissected the way to do this and ran into some fairly significant challenges on why we ended up with that access off of campus. First, there's a Edison transmission line that runs next to the building that would need to be relocated. There are poles here, here, and here, which is fairly extensive work. And there's a fairly long planning cycle, as our guys from Edison here can attest to. Those of you that drive by here from Barton Road to the building, there's about a 10-foot grade separation, so that's a pretty steep slope. Anything that would run up then would have to start here, negotiate however that grade works to where the traffic is at different levels or hits this corner, has to make a really quick drop into the facility. So there's a fairly difficult way to manage just how the vehicles handle that grade separation. We are required by the fire department to have access on 3 sides of the building. This road then would also, this fire access road would impact whatever turn or access we have coming off Barton. We do, as we go forward, you'll see the turn pocket we've put out in front, but to be able to make an access in here would require a deceleration lane at some point off Barton to slow down to be able to get into that. And then what happens is, as the new hospital comes in, back of house services, all the stuff that happens now in the emergency department, the loading zone, is scheduled to happen someplace in this area with exit for ambulances and trucks, which end up conflicting. So you have the acceleration lane conflicting with the deceleration lane. You have these vehicles speeding up and slowing down in the same space. So that makes it really, the power line, the grade change, the fire road, the conflict with the acceleration and deceleration makes it, I don't want to say impossible, but pushing impossible to get a direct access off of Barton into there. We were asked to look at the pedestrian pathways. Today there is no sidewalk pathway along Barton on this side. The remainder of the sidewalks will stay in place throughout. At the completion of the 2020, this project, then this sidewalk will be installed. The existing sidewalks will remain. The sidewalk here, it already negotiates a bunch of driveways. It's negotiating this driveway already. We'd relocate it to here for the facility, so there aren't any more sidewalk conflicts than there already exist for pedestrians. There's 3 bus stops, one on the corner, one kind of right in front of the ER, one on the corner, and and one back over here by the church. Have offered to Omnitrans, and they're looking at the ridership and the use to either relocate this one to here or relocate the two of them to some central point in here. The applicant is willing to give them whatever space they need along this stretch to be able to relocate that. It'll still allow us access into the ER for anybody that's on the bus stop, access through pedestrian pathways into the new facility, and then again, if it's relocated into this area, access into the remainder of the institution. So, the crux of the matter. We're looking at still traffic down Barton, a right-hand turn off Barton onto campus. The new striping pattern would have campus as 2 lanes. Currently, it is only 1. You can kind of see the lighter gray, and the next slide will really show it. Where the existing patterns are right now, it's only 1. There would be an added turn pocket. So this right-hand movement would get a free movement. The cross off campus becomes a straight through, so you're not conflicting with the right. Essentially, there's now 2 points of movement here. There would be a right hand in off the turn pocket, as well as a second right hand in off that middle lane of campus, and a through, and then the center lane of campus is a through. As we have it, we have a permissive left and a permissive right. This is not a controlled intersection. That's a stop sign at that spot. For reference sake, the ER also has a permissive left, and this left actually comes out. People are making crosses through this turns area here, as well as anything coming out of the loading dock is making their lefts out of here as well. So, this one took me a while to figure out, but there's a lot going on here. We've got the existing campus as it sits today. You can see the lanes coming down Barton with the one right-hand turn lane coming into the one campus lane. You can see how it kind of pinches down right here by the entrance in the existing parking lot. There's a painted island and a striped left-hand turn crossing into here. And then this emergency exit that's allowing this turn kind of through this turn area and the crosswalk. And then, of course, there's the continuation of campus from the south going northbound that ends up with the 2 lanes trying to meet here. What we have in the proposed is the westbound Barton into the northbound campus, and then allowing that second for either the second movement or a crossing of campus across there. And then immediately allowing anybody that's going to make this turn to get out of the main flow of campus, get into this so that we can have through traffic on that outside lane going into the employee parking. So I kind of did the exact same thing, shows the arrows and what's kind of happening here, 2 lanes coming in, the cross, and then the exit with the permissive left and the right. That's what this thing's going to look like when they're done. You can kind of see the interior levels. They'll be hidden behind a plastic mesh screening. The screening will be illuminated at night. It will kind of maintain that white color and the feel that the existing children's hospital and the building behind it have. So it's not just this floor after floor of parking structure, so it blends into what's existing there. It's kind of this plastic chain link material, a little bit of a better look at that stuff, and it kind of glows as you throw light up into it. The existing materials, poured concrete, metal and glass and polycarbonate veneers to accent the building. And like I said, the polycarbonate would be backlit, so that it really kind of picks up that white and looks like the rest of the building. Landscape, I think we saw this before, but pretty much low grasses, grass through the planting area here. There's existing trees to provide a tree canopy, grasses and low plants across the front with trees to provide some thermal shading and to break up the massing of the building. An internal courtyard that connects the structure into the existing children's hospital with trees, courtyard. Most of the trees are fairly low water usage, the desert Palo Verde and the California bays, so that they do provide shade for the courtyard, but that aren't using too much water, and then kind of lower vegetation and plants, some flowering and shrubs to fill out this area. There's also some seating, some benches, pavers, a little bit of a courtyard feel to connect these two, so the buildings aren't really touching, but there's a way to get from one to the other in a comfortable, relaxed manner. And that is it. Questions?
Can you go back to your last slide? Help me. Is the entrance, the walking entrance from the new structure to the medical center, is that on ground level, or and
Yes.
if so, where?
It will be at ground level. You pull in, park wherever in the structure.
Yeah.
Elevator banks back in the northeast corner with kind of a lobby area, not really a lobby, but a opening area in front of the elevators, and then a pathway into the new building, or the existing building.
Okay. The other question that I had was in terms of the traffic leaving the,
Which one you want?
I'll tell you when you get to it. With the arrows pointing, all right, there, that's the one. With 740, I think it was roughly 740 cars that this will contain, are we worried that during peak times when we have traffic on campus, and I'm not worried about any of it except exiting the structure and turning south on campus? Are we worried about it kind of boogering up, cars lined up?
The only real concern on it is because this is patient and visitor parking only.
Okay.
It's not for
Employees.
employees. So, as you're probably more well aware of than anybody. At 7:45, this is not the
Yep,
place to be.
yep.
At 8:30, that's not such a bad place. And the same thing, about 4:45, you don't want to be in here. But by 5:45, it's not a bad deal again. So what we're looking at is this load generally is going to be coming in during business hours, so very little overlap with the employee activity. If there is overlap, it'll be in the afternoon piece for probably about a half hour to 45 minutes, where these guys are trying to get out and we have employees making this movement. But it's a relatively small, Carl can stop me if I'm going off the rails here, but because there's this kind of constant in and out, just churn of people, we're not really looking at a huge impact on making this. And like I
Okay.
said,
No, that makes sense.
ER is already doing this left, and then
Yeah.
this driveway up here is making this left too.
However, the ER has kind of there's an entrance, and then the exit is a ways away from the entrance. They're not both concentrated right at the same driveway.
Unless it's changed since I was driving in and out of there, you come in, you back out.
You go all the way around, and you exit
Do they allow a loop through there now?
further north.
Okay.
But, so, relative, we're really being presented with the same project we looked at last time, with a few minor things, differences. But my big concern is everyone coming out of that parking structure, well, not everyone, but a lot of people are going to try to make that left, and what's it going to do to traffic, and where are the crosswalks going to be, and how, you just kind of talked about it a little bit, about the peak periods when people are going to work or church or whatever, but throughout the day, have we done any studies of how many vehicles will be moving in and out, and the average per hour, and do we know any of that stuff?
Let me address the crosswalk issue first, and then I think Carl can speak to the traffic engineer can speak to the hourly stuff. We already have this access into the parking lot on the sidewalk here, so essentially what we would end up doing is moving this to a safe island in here, access, and then pedestrian access. So we're not creating any more openings. We're moving that opening from one point to the other.
But we're increasing the volume of the amount of cars parked there.
But we are increasing the number of cars. And, like I said, the estimation is that what comes in and out of here is going to be spread out over the course of the day. I think Carl can speak to, at what points. The only thing we're really seeing is perhaps a conflict as, this 4:30 to 5:30 rush of these guys, and if you happen to be trying to get out of here, it becomes challenging. The other alternative, I know you said we're putting the same project before you. In one respect it is, in the other respect, you asked us to go back and we dissected this thing to get to this point. The other option, if there is no permissive left here, is we end up with a traffic signal on a traffic signal on a traffic signal, which creates, this monstrosity like we have down at Mountain View.
No, it's unfortunate we couldn't have synced that up with Molnar somehow when we were originally planning this out.
Well, and one of the discussions is, and once again, this is part of, when we talked about how this fits into the whole world, is the existing facility will be repurposed at some point, and we'll have to handle, at this point, there is no parking assigned for what happens in the existing facility, so they will have to come up with parking for that. And one of the discussion points is that this would be a reasonable location where the emergency facility is now as a parking, which would then allow some way to create that. But that's something, it's one of those, we're thinking about it, what if, maybes. There is no definite plan yet to do that. The other thing we looked at was, real quick, is if we allow only a right out of here, it will force traffic down to University and either out Stewart, and then it will loop back through Anderson, or out to Redlands Boulevard, or go out University and come back Barton. So it really creates an awkward movement to get
My feeling for
back
visitors,
east.
people that are coming in here to use that parking lot in particular, because it's the visitor parking lot, they're going to want to leave the same way that they came in. People don't generally want to explore new options as they're leaving. So unfortunately, if you come in off of Barton, you're going to want to make that left to go back up to Barton. If you come south on campus, you're going to want to, first off, you got to make the left to get into the lot, but when you leave, then you make the right and you go north on campus. But
And
I don't
we
know,
agree with that.
we're actually pretty lucky in that we have our lieutenant that's here tonight is the county expert on traffic, and I look up to him quite a bit for traffic-related issues, and I kind of just wanted to get maybe his opinion and thoughts on all those 740 cars in and out of a parking structure where they have to make a permissive left in front of free-flowing traffic. Any thoughts?
I do agree with you that the coming out of it or trying to come into it off of a left-hand turn is going to be very problematic. And I do agree with you with saying people don't typically, human nature is not to explore another way. You always try to go back out the way you came, especially with the influx of traffic that will come in from outside the city as they do. You're going to run into problems with people trying to find a new way out if they're forced to go one direction. As you said, going off to the right and being forced out towards Stewart, ending up back in towards Anderson, they're going to try to loop around and come back if they came in off of Barton. And vice versa, if they've come in off of Stewart and down that way, if they're going to want to make a right-hand turn to get back out. So your left-hand turn in that location is going to be problematic any way you do it. I don't see a good way around it. Obviously, if you can keep them going in a clockwise direction to get in and out, that's your best bet to keep away from the cross traffic. But the location leaves you with limited options on what to do.
From your expertise, and he's got a lot of expertise, any thoughts or projections? You don't have to go there. My concern is we'll see an increase in auto ped stuff, and obviously collisions, just straight vehicular collisions coming in and out, making that left, but I was more worried about the crosswalks and the employees coming from the other lots, but I don't know. Maybe I'm just being a little too...
I know 740 sounds like a big number, but if you spread that across 12 hours, that works out to about a car a minute. And I know you're kind of imagining, I keep using the Disneyland analogy. I mean, we have to handle traffic like Disneyland does because of so many out-of-towners and such a big influx. But don't imagine Hollywood Bowl traffic where everybody's trying to get out at once. This is a constant, day-long churn. And I agree with you that there will be some issues, but it's kind of making the best of what there is.
Well, and I understand. I mean, ultimately, we're faced with a decision that the parking lot's got to go into that corner, and we have to figure out what's the way we can do it. And there are not a whole lot of options, but I just, down the road, when somebody comes back and rethinks this and says, hey, man, look at all these increased collisions, and what was the council, and what were these people thinking when they put this here? I just kind of want to say for the record, I foresee there's going to be problems there. And we're going to listen to complaints, and we're going to listen to upset people over it. I feel there's no way in and out of it. And 740, I mean, as compared to whatever's there now, 80 spots, it's different. And I don't know that it's a 12-hour cycle. I would say most appointments are probably between 8 and 5, absent like the ER type stuff. But
This is, patient and visitor, so the visitors are there, but, even in the worst case, 2 cars a minute to take it down to a 5-hour window. So yes, there will be impacts. The efforts here are to mitigate and to manage those impacts. And this left out, for where we are today, is about as good as we can make it work. It's something that as things happen, the next 10 years or so, that we can keep pushing in this direction, because that really would be an ideal.
Right, obviously. And is it able to, with a structure like this, be able to be retrofitted if that was expanded down there in the future?
Let's go back to, you can kind of see it would involve, just for the remainder of the layout here, this is the loading dock area here, or back in here. And if you guys remember, right next to the ER, there's about a 12-foot retaining wall where all those cars park up against. So it would require, some way to come in, go up, and access this. But since this is the main access point already, it does allow for this. The ramping happens here in front, so it would allow for this type of movement in the future.
And then one other just point of clarification real quick. I see in the staff report, talks about one floor below grade. Is that for parking, or is that just for?
No, that's an error in the staff report. Everything's at ground level.
So everything's at ground level, but...
But there's no subterranean. There's ground plus 6.
Right, but the other one proposal was 7 floors?
The last time we looked at it, there were a couple of different options.
So that was that going to be higher, or was that going to be the same height because that incorporated the lower?
It would have had one more floor below.
Okay.
But what we did is we really nailed down and worked with the applicant to, put this thing in a box and tell us what's going to happen here, because there were too many moving pieces for you to make a fair decision on an either-or situation.
So 2 questions then about that. What about the view for the people that live across the street? And did I hear you just say it's going to be illuminated all night? Will that be glowing into their bedrooms?
Let's get back to, let me jump through a couple of these if you don't mind to address that. So the environmental impact report that we looked at originally for the entire campus transformation and the master plan envisioned an 85-foot high parking structure. We brought that down to 65 feet, so that reduces that visual impact by 20 feet. not to be flippant, but if I'm this guy, 20 feet doesn't mean anything. I mean, that's still a pretty big impact to, there's a grade separation, but he is still looking into the side of this building. The reality is he's also looking into this building and this building and this building. And that there is illumination as part of this. We can put conditions on the applicant as far as the brightness, that illumination, hours that it's illuminated. That's well within, to come up with conditions and we can put it on there. The planning commission drill.
It looks nice, though. I like the illumination.
And if
I don't
it's
live next to it either.
if it's done subtly, yeah. If it's looking in my bedroom window, but once again, it is across Barton Road. That's Barton's 100 feet. That's probably another 100 feet. So you're 220, 230 feet from the back of the house.
While you have this slide up, if I can interrupt for a minute, I was going to ask questions about the bus stops. I'm worried about the one right on the corner, that's going to jam traffic.
This one will be removed. And it will either be relocated to here,
Okay.
or both of these will be removed, and it will be one stop will be relocated to someplace in here.
There's actually one there already, I think.
Yeah, there's one here, and there's one kind of right before you get to the church parking lot.
Yeah.
And then Omnitrans is doing a study on the ridership and the number of people that are dropped off, because this is 1,000 feet. To maybe eliminate both of them and have one so that there's still ER access and then hospital access,
Okay.
maybe lining up with the pedestrian bridge or somewhere in that area.
Good. I feel better.
Okay, we got one for you.
Well, I think if, it looks like there's too many logistical problems to have any other entrance other than where it is. And assuming the parking structure is going to be where it is, I'm not sure there's anything else you can do. I agree with the concerns that have been expressed about the left turns. And I mean, it's bad enough I see left turns going in and out of the parking structure across from the church. And I don't know that seems like that's going to be even less. This will be more than that is. But with the idea that maybe perhaps you could expand into that ER parking lot and do something coming out that other way, I think in the future that makes me feel a little better that you could do something that way. Otherwise, I'm not sure what else you could do. I thank you for this presentation. I think it was very well thought out and put together, and I appreciate it.
Well, thank you.
No, it looks like an attractive structure with that.
I think it'll blend very
Compared
nicely
to-
with what's,
Yeah.
you can kind of see in the background what's already there, what the new building is, and kind of the white.
No, it
It'll
looks
hold
good.
that
I like
still,
it.
that same theme. And we really did want to get away from having just,
Yeah.
row of parking on one of the most visible corners of the city.
No, I like that. I just agree with all the comments. I think that between the crosswalks and the traffic entering and the traffic trying to pass and the traffic exiting, I do think it's going to booger up from time to time. But I understand your point that these are patients or visitors, and so the traffic will flow more than be, intense during certain periods of the day.
And, one of the whoops, other way. It sounds, I got this from Dr. Hart, listening to him talk about a year and a half ago. When we were looking at the VA property, and he was concerned about what would happen to a piece of land 150 years from now. And it gave me a real interesting perspective on, what we're looking at. And what we really are looking at, and if I can go back to very early on, is, laying some groundwork in here for what's going to happen in here, and will ultimately define what happens for the remainder of the area. So to say this is a project that's going to have impacts for 10 or 15 years and call it temporary may not fly in other cities, but this, is someplace that a temporary project that has impacts through here and really creates something in 20 or 30 years from now may be a big enough bullet to bite to get where you want to go.
Hold right there in that picture. To use your Disneyland analogy, down the road, if once the ER is moved, what would almost be the best is to seal off those entrances right there on campus, and you force everybody to come in the lot in these queued up, kind of lanes, like
Yep.
you would coming down like you do at Disneyland, and in and out that way, and out through the light at Loma. It's a good point. But my question is that something, once we approve this, is that something we can go back and have any teeth or exert any pressure as a city or an organization to look or consider that? Because I just want to have some type of possible option out there down the road when we look at what a traffic mess we're going to have, and I'm pretty confident we're going to have one there. Is that something, and again, okay, it's temporary, we know we're going to have the expansion up the road a little bit, we're going to have all these different things that are going to be happening, but, in my mind, that would be the best, but of course, real estate is precious, and I know every bit of that is probably planned for some building or facility or whatever. I just think that would be really neat if that could be figured out somehow.
For us to definitively tie this to this is not something we can do tonight. But what we can do, though, is lay the groundwork and make the expectation clear that as you're reorienting this, and this becomes, back of house, putting a parking structure in the, essentially putting a parking structure in your living room is not going to work. That this is probably the area that you want to see it at.
And again, and it's been stated before, obviously, the medical center and the university are the core and the soul of our city. However, we also answer to everybody else. We answer to the residents, we answer to the public that drives on our city streets, we answer to all of those folks as well, and we have to balance that out. So believe me, I understand the importance, and I think it's a great project. I just want to plant those seeds. It's stupid to say it's on record, but it's on record. So, 10 years down the road, when we're talking about this, or whoever's up here talking about it, that we actually kind of discussed it and just didn't rubber stamp everything that came across here.
We've worked to that point. We've, to address and to really reiterate what you're saying. We've done Stewart widening, we've done campus widening, we've realigned, we've already got two parking structures here. We're talking about a third one. There's 1 million square feet of space that is going to have to be repurposed and address those parking issues, and it would be very difficult then to say we're not going to address the parking issues somewhere, maybe not there, but somewhere in this space, and then have to come back with a reason why it shouldn't happen there.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to air laundry, but it's kind of funny to me because the longer I've sat up here, I realize that a lot of the different entities here in town don't always necessarily talk to each other, even though they're all part of the same mothership. And that would be the church and the university versus the medical center and different groups. So we know we got a huge university church project that's coming in, and a whole transformation of their campus. And I made the joke last time. Do they know that their bistro is going to be blocked by the view, and all that stuff, because there's a big plan for all that. So all of that, those are users too, and so we have to consider everybody.
Is this going to complete the parking for the new medical center, or is there more parking coming?
This will eliminate the surface parking here that's out in front, will allow the building to be built and handle the parking for the new building.
So there's no more structures that are going to be built?
Well, there's no more structure for the new building. However, there's 1 million square feet of old building that has to be repurposed in one form or another that has not addressed parking for. So as we sit today, the day this building opens,
Yeah.
this building closes until we get some other way to address the impacts and the uses of that building.
All right. That's all my questions.
How is 700, well, somebody's done a study, so 740 spaces is going to replace everything that's out in front of the medical center, and that's going to be adequate?
I believe
For the new
there's...
hospital?
What's out there now? 550.
So it's actually increasing the number of
So
spaces.
630, is that what you're at? 550 plus 80?
There's also 88 cases.
Okay, so you're increasing by 110.
Are there plans to leave that other structure there at Anderson and Barton too?
Anderson and
The
Barton.
temporary parking for the workers?
Oh, down here?
Yeah, we're across from the FMO, in front of the Ronald McDonald House.
If that does fall in place, and if that happens, that would be a condition that it stays there, that it's not removed when they're done.
So you got a lot more there too.
And once again, to feed this, that would require, some parking in other places as well, so we really would have a back-of-house activity here.
One of the conditions is that construction begin within 1 year. When are we planning to start this project? 6 months? Okay. The other issue, well, let me find it. During the construction of the new parking structure, I'm going to make the assumption, but with a little trepidation, that the workers that are building it, all of the equipment that's going to go, it's a fairly tight area, and I'm assuming there's going to be careful planning for the circulation of all of the cement trucks and the construction workers and all the stuff that goes into building a facility like this, because that's a small area, and again, I just want to be sure that we're respectful of the demands on campus during the peak times of the day.
I think, let me see if we can get...
Part of that is self-preservation, and John Lennart asked me to ask the questions.
I think there's mechanisms to, there is road access here. Not speaking for the construction guys and nailing them down, but if it was me doing it, I'd be bringing in a lot of stuff through this path here, and not trying to bring in a bunch here. And just as far as worker parking, the site really is too tight to have lay down and have worker parking. We dealt with it you can this picture shows the construction going on here. We dealt with it across the street and kept it contained with...
It's a much bigger site, though, too.
It was a little bigger site. It's also a bigger parking structure. We kept it contained relatively well. And to say there was no impact would not be true. But we also didn't end up closing Campus Street in the process.
Anything else?
So all of the cement trucks, are they coming up campus, or are they going to follow Conrad's plan?
I missed that question.
Our intention is we're going to route the trucks down Barton and turn on campus. We haven't worked out all the issues with it. We'll figure that out as we get closer to it, with the contractor support. But our goal is we're going to do our best not to impact traffic.
Okay. Somebody taking notes here? Okay.
The workers, we're going to park on the 7th floor of the West Hall parking. No lock orders in there now.
Okay, that makes sense.
Are there any conditions as far as time of construction, time of day, any of that kind of stuff?
I don't know if they're listed, but there are the typical 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., no Saturday work. And I think we can put in a no Sunday if that's something you want to add to it. There may be some variation with this, since you hit concrete. Concrete guys start work about the time Dr. Lennart starts work. So those guys probably will be there a little earlier, but it's a noise issue to impact these houses around here.
And when the cyclotron went in, I thought that the university and contractor did a masterful job of trying to keep traffic flow moving in that parking lot, dental school parking lot. And I was very pleased with that. But when the cement trucks showed up, they would line up. And that's my concern. If they start lining up on campus, then it could get interesting. But, I trust that the university is going to try to control that. If they do as well with that as they did with the cyclotron installation, then I think we'll be fine.
Well, we got the guy
But
that
they
built
do
two of
line
them
up.
already, so he'll figure
What's
it out.
that?
We got the guy that built two of them already building this
Yeah.
one, so we'll figure it out.
Okay, yeah, that works.
All right. Any more questions?
Trying to figure out how I'm going to get to work.
As long as there's a lane.
Never you
for
mind those
Lennart and
details.
Daly to kind of negotiate our way through, then.
Do we need to continue the public comment portion? I know we opened it up last time, so we continue it again today. Okay. All right. Any more questions from the dais? All right. With that being said, I will open up once again the public comment. Anyone wishing to speak on the topic is welcome to come forward. And again, I see no takers. So we will...
They'll show up when the cement trucks do.
Yes. We will officially close the public comment then at this point. And Mr. City Attorney, what would be the next course of business? Are we looking for a motion?
Yes.
And
Motion would be to approve PPD number 14043, subject to the findings and conditions of approval.
now,
And if you wish to add anything, you should do that in advance.
I would throw out that, since I'm conducting this right now, I don't think I can make the motion, but it might be considered that one of the conditions be put in the motion that some type of mechanism or care is put in place for the option of conversion down the road if they were to look at expanding, not a forced option, but it's just some type of clause where we can open up discussion, and whatever building that's built has the ability to be transformed.
So you're talking about redirecting the ingress and egress from the building?
Well, some type of
As an
condition
option.
where that would be an option down the road, we could look at that, where the building or structure, is that what's my terminology? Am I getting that right? We had a brief discussion about this, so.
I think if there's a condition that consideration is made for future expansion to the north, that would at least address that ingress and egress future into Molnar.
How does that strike you guys? I thought somebody may want to address that.
Eric Schultz with the Medical Center. I think that we are open to that recommendation. It would be difficult for us to, obviously, as a requirement, it would be difficult to respond to it at this time, given that we are still undergoing planning. Certainly, it's not something we'd be able to finalize or even entertain beginning work on it until we were completed, completed with the new structure so that the emergency parking was no longer necessary in that location. One other item just for consideration that wasn't discussed that I want to make sure that the City Council is aware of is we do anticipate in the development of the campus transformation plan to have ingress and egress on the frontage road as well, so that not all cars are going to have to come into campus. That will be the condition during the construction of the new building. But that will be a temporary condition because we anticipate the frontage road also having traffic in and out of the structure. Again, moving from, if you entered the main location of where the medical center is going to be a frontage road all the way around that structure and back. So there is the high likelihood that a good portion of the traffic is actually going to be split between the campus ingress and egress and that of the frontage road leading back to the front of the medical center for drop-offs and pickups.
That's helpful.
Even the frontage road right by Barton Road where the fire road is?
Yes, essentially the frontage road that exists now is, there will be a frontage road. Yes, there's going to be some modifications of that. We anticipate someone being able to drive into the front area, the front main drop-off of the medical center, go into the structure, park, come out of the structure, go back out into the very front of the medical center and leave at the primary entrance. So that will be a condition upon completion of the hospital, which, is anticipated towards the end of 2019. So there will be a period of time when that is not going to be in effect, but long-term it will be.
But you're building the structure with the idea that that's
Yes,
going to happen.
right. And we're designing that ingress and egress onto that frontage road currently. So long-term, that helps mitigate some of the concern discussed about the amount of volume in and out of campus. And then again, as it relates, I think, to the ED, or a reconfiguration of queuing and all the traffic coming in, we have anticipated the possibility of expanding that structure, as Conrad noted, to the north. A couple challenges with that do become, even if we could expand the actual amount of spaces and the structure itself, we'd have to reconfigure the ingress and egress significantly. So I don't think we are completely opposed to considering whatever works best for that area, for Loma Linda, for the community there. But again, I would ask that if we are going to make some sort of reference to that we note it as a recommendation that we're open to at this point. But we can't commit to anything because of the variability moving forward with that space.
I appreciate that, but it means really nothing. So,
I know.
Right? No, I understand your position. So, in our little sidebar discussion, it was when you build a structure, do you have the option of removing a wall on the side of the structure and still maintaining the structural stability and ability to think? That I think was the concern, that if we build something and it's got to stay configured the way it is, then that's there and we're not going to move it. But down the road, could we possibly?
Yes, I mean, and some of the configurations we looked at, in fact, when we were going through some of the very early concepts, one of them was more of a rectangular shape all the way over the entire emergency department parking lot. So I think that is a possibility without completely making large-scale changes. Again, it's just something at this point that it would be difficult to try to commit to.
All right.
Follow up on the point I made earlier about like there's a big glow in somebody's, you say you could put some restrictions and so forth on that. Would that be something that's down the road?
No, we would ask you to include that as part of the condition, that we work with the applicant to manage the illumination of the building to some, whatever, Caltrans standard for illuminated sign or some...
I'm not sure it's a big deal, but I just wonder if I was living there and it was just like...
I think just something that we manage, work with the applicant to manage the illumination of the building is enough to give us flexibility to hold our feet to the fire and keep it from being this big glowing monstrosity.
A couple of quick...
You got a really long motion. So
Just to comment on that, I think one of the actual positive components of the facade that we're looking at is it actually diffuses the light. One of the probably the more difficult things is having headlights flash into people's windows, and it's certainly something we were cognizant of given the proximity to our patient beds. That structure is going to be very close, so it's been very high throughout our design development, very high on our priority list to make sure that whatever structure we design, ultimately what ends up getting built is not going to have a really adverse impact on headlights going into our room, and it would be a similar carryover, I think, to the community as well. So we're hopeful that that facade will help diffuse some of that light, although illumination of the structure we believe is important for the safety of patients and visitors as well. Well-lit structure obviously is going to be conducive to that environment.
There are no houses that face Barton right there that would be coming in the front of the house necessarily, but there are houses that face north that are higher up on the hill towards Lawton that could easily hit by the headlights, I think, if you're going up a ramp or things are parking. So I understand that. I think that makes sense.
John, you look ready to go.
Okay. I would make a motion that we approve precise plan design number 14-043 to construct a 7-level parking structure on the northeast corner of Campbell Street and Barton Road with, 6 level, sorry. It says 7 up there. With consideration being given to possible modification of egress and egress looking toward the east and north for future modification, and also a directive being given to work with staff as to community standards for lighting. I'm not going to say all that again. Did you get it all?
Barbara's next to him, so,
She's close enough to me, I think you got it. Okay. Did I encompass everything?
yeah. Second the motion.
Okay, well, let's move this quickly. All in favor? Aye. And the motion passes unanimously. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I could hear your motion. It was a distant echo, but it was there. Okay, we've got a few items. Consent calendar.
I'm ready to move it, but looks like maybe Dr. Daly has a question.
Oh, no, I'm just reading number 6. I didn't read the staff report on that. That's in harmony with the motion we just approved, and it's a routine way to handle this. Go ahead.
So I'll make the motion to move the consent calendar.
Second.
Question for the attorney. Do I need to deal with number 6?
Well, this is an agreement with Lilburn Corporation. The purpose has to do with the project from which you've been conflicted, but the item before you does not in and of itself represent such a conflict.
Okay. Okay, there's a motion and a second for the consent calendar. Is there any discussion? Okay, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. It's unanimous. We approve the consent calendar. There's no old business, no new business. Is there any report of councilman? Any reports of officers? Okay, then the city council is adjourned to 5 p.m. on Wednesday, November 12, for a workshop relating to development impact fees. So mark your calendar. It's going to be a rip-roaring good time. And that is the adjournment of city council. Next, we have the successor agency to the Loma Linda Redevelopment Agency. Are there any items to be added or deleted?
No, sir.
Would the public like to speak on any items not on the agenda? No takers. How about the consent calendar? What do you think?
I'll move it again.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. It's unanimous. And that agenda is adjourned. Then we go to the Housing Authority. Are there any items to be added or deleted?
No, sir.
Would the public like to speak on any non-agenda items? Nobody. Consent calendar?
Move it.
Okay, any discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, no. It's unanimous. That's approved. Are there any member reports? Any reports of officers? Okay, then we're adjourned, and that's it. Thank you all.
I have just to notify you, I'm out of the country on November 12th.
Yeah, and I can't make it either.
Yeah, it's a joint meeting with Colton, isn't it? No, that's a different.
Yeah, that's...
No, this is development impact fee.
I mean, I'm comfortable with you moving forward. I just
do we
want
need-
you to know there's not a chance I can be here.
I can't be here either.
Well, we don't know if Opie's going to be here, so we need a quorum at least, right?
It's just
And
a
then would they
workshop.
be,
It's a workshop that I will submit.
Yes, that item is not for action that evening, so it would come back again on the
Now,
city
what
council
it
agenda.
is, tell me I understand what a development impact fee is. I'm trying to understand what the purpose of this workshop.
Modification of...
Yes, what happened is we were required to do really development impact fee every 5 to 10 years. And the last one we did was 10 years ago, where we can't just come up with a dollar amount for development impact fee. The city had to come up with proposed project, what we plan to do with the money when the city built out. For example, for the storm drain development impact fee, we plan to extend the storm drain across Benton to eliminate the part of the flow that go into open channel behind the Grayson Center that was flooded part of the academy. So that was the storm drain that was proposed. And when whoever going to do development in that area have to pay the money into development impact fee for storm drain, so that when we have enough money, we can extend the storm drain. So we have a list of projects for the storm drain system. We have a list of projects for street improvement, traffic signal, park, sewer,
You can't just
water.
bank the money, you have to have plans for it.
Correct. You have to have plan for it all the way to built out.
So,
So have to come out with a cost estimate and justification, and then after we have all that, we add them up and we divide it with the general plan update. We will figure out how many house we will have at the build out, how many square foot of commercial space that we have.
we have an existing development impact fee
Yes, we do.
structure.
Correct.
So we
An
will
update.
reassess that and update it, and
Yes, sir.
modify what's already working.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And yes.
So I presume this is preparatory for the consultant to begin working with the council, and it will come back for final action at a later date
I
after
see.
public hearing.
Well,
So then
some
we-
of us will be a little less informed than others then, I guess.
And again, I'd be happy to work with you on an
that's fine.
individual basis.
That's fine.
so we'll
I
keep,
get to add up all this number quite a bit.
so we'll keep November 12 then. Okay. Thank you, faithful attendees. Are you on the left or the right of the chamber? Is this like the House of Representatives?